We've seen the Heisman odds. We know the talent that he's got, but what are some reasonable expectations for Jackson Arnold coming up on Locked On Sooners?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. The show is at Locked On Sooners. And Josh, spring ball is approaching. Really, first week, we're getting going. Football is back. Even though it's the spring variety, football is back. And we have a quarterback that's going to be taking over that's got high expectations for him. Jackson Arnold, a five-star player, someone who was very, very productive down there at Denton Guyer, comes in with a lot of talent. And, you know, he doesn't sit there in the Heisman favorite discussion, not participating in a lot of the top 10 quarterback lists from across the country. But he is heading into a season where he's going to be in his first year as a starter. Oklahoma's quarterback university. We know this. They've produced some impressive numbers over the last 20 plus years. And yet we've been down this road with a five-star freshman or five-star first-year starter in recent memory. Spencer Rattler came in, took over for Jalen Hurts in the 2020 season, and was okay. He wasn't bad. Helped Oklahoma win a Big 12 title, but he didn't necessarily light the world on fire either as a five-star in his first year starting. So Josh, let's just start with this. Okay. What are some reasonable expectations for Jackson Arnold? Because again, the talent is there. Nobody's going to deny that. And yet first year as a starter, moving into the SEC, playing some tough road environments like Baton Rouge, Auburn, Oxford. It's going to be a tough road for him. But what can we expect from Jackson Arnold?
Well, is it unfair to say that with college football expanding to the 12-team playoff, and we'll see what the future brings beyond that, if it's going to go to 14 or 16 or whatever the near future looks like, but it's 12 teams right now. And with that being the format for college football, a reasonable expectation, I know it's a team goal, but let's start there. Getting into the college football playoff, is that a reasonable expectation for really any starting Oklahoma quarterback now and going forward into the future?
Yes, I really do think that that's kind of the floor for Oklahoma. You can't miss the playoff at 12 teams. You can't miss it at 14 teams, especially, but you really can't miss it at 12. You've got to be in the hunt. And yeah, it's a transition year, moving into the SEC with a new starting quarterback. But like I said, the talent is there for him to be a productive player for the Oklahoma Sooners. You're bringing back a lot on defense. It's a team game and it's a team accomplishment, but Jackson Arnold to me is good enough to help you get to the playoff. And to me, that's kind of the floor as far as expectations go. Now I've said in the past that 8-9 wins is about where Oklahoma should be in most projections. And if some things fall right, you could be pushing for 10 or 11 wins. But I think you've got to be in contention for the playoff. Even if it's your first year as a starter, first year in the SEC, you've got to be in the hunt, especially as you get into that November schedule that features at Missouri, at LSU, and you host Alabama.
Yeah, there's a ton of tough games we know on the schedule. You really you can't afford to, for any reason, slip up versus either Houston or Tulane. It should be a perfect non-conference for Oklahoma, but that's sort of a non-negotiable. You got to get out of those games, those front three, unblemished. And then you start talking about the first SEC game versus Tennessee, which I've mentioned this a lot, John. Nico Iamaleava and Jackson Arnold, they're in similar situations. They each come in 5-star kids, tons of hype. They've made respective starts, but just, the one for Iamaleava and just the one for Jackson Arnold, though Jackson Arnold, a little more seat time because of what happened at BYU. And yet, okay, so that's where you start. Then you got a trip to Auburn. Then you got the Texas game. Of course, you've got South Carolina, who we expect to, that should be a manageable home game, but it's a conference game in the SEC, right? So is anything, for the most part, not named Vanderbilt, manageable in the SEC? They can all be challenging at Ole Miss, at Mizzou, Bama, and LSU, at LSU to close. So it's a challenging schedule, and it's probably, with that, I think you can, as long as you don't get embarrassed, if you're competitive in every game for the most part, John, I think you can lose 3 games and be one of the 12 teams in the college football playoff. I think that's a realistic possibility. So I would start there for Oklahoma and Jackson Arnold. The production side, just to give you a little bit of a basis here, and things are going to ramp up. So you tell me if you think the numbers hypothetically would come down for a starting quarterback for Oklahoma in what will be a stronger conference. But the numbers for Dylan Gabriel a season ago, basically 3,700 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That's 30 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He had 25 passing touchdowns the year before that, 6 interceptions. Remember, he missed like a game and a half because of the injury. So 30 combined touchdowns, is that reasonable rushing and throwing for Jackson Arnold? And I'm going to set the interception total based on what we saw in the bowl game. I'm going to say 10. Is that reasonable? 30 combined touchdowns, rushing, throwing, 10 interceptions.
I feel like 30 is maybe, again, the floor. Dylan Gabriel had 12 rushing touchdowns last year, and so he had over 40 combined touchdowns. Again, tougher, defenses that you'll play in the SEC. But maybe 30 to 35, I think is kind of where I want to put him, because he's going to get some rushing touchdowns as well. He'll get some scores, maybe not 12 in his first year, but I'd imagine he gets 6. And so, if he can throw for 30 and rush for 6, I think you're off to a good start. If you put him at maybe 25 passing touchdowns, 6 rushing touchdowns, maybe he hits that 30. For me, what I want to see is a guy that completes at least 65% of his passes in his first year as a starter. I want to see that interception rate, I want to see 8 or less interceptions, to be honest, because if you're throwing 10, that's nearly an interception a game in the regular season. And that could potentially lose you some games if you're not careful, a little bit more careful with the football. Now, the Alamo Bowl game, that's got us maybe a little paused as to our expectations for him on that front, but I think he'll learn from that stuff. And I think he'll find a way to throw those balls without throwing them into some dangerous situations. I do think, there's a lot to learn from the Alamo Bowl, both from Seth Luttrell, from Jackson Arnold, from the offense as a whole. And so, I just don't expect him to throw 3 interceptions or 4 interceptions, or actually he had 3 interceptions and a fumble. I don't expect him to have 4 turnovers on a regular basis. There might be the rare game where he does that, but I just don't think that's going to be the norm for him. So I'm expecting a guy that's just going to be in control. He's going to have everything a little bit more under control, going to feel a lot more comfortable, and then is going to shine. But I would say, 30 combined touchdowns, to me, 8 or fewer interceptions. I feel like that puts you in the hunt, especially if Oklahoma's run game is able to get off and running early on in the season.
And just in closing on this subject, which we can probably revisit on a number of occasions throughout this Oklahoma offseason and during the spring season for the Sooners, my expectations for Jackson Arnold are for him to be great in year 1, but the premise of this conversation is sort of what's reasonable for somebody that hasn't started but the lone game. But look, he's a 5-star kid that was the Elite 11 MVP. I mean, this is somebody that doesn't come in with the expectation that it's going to take him a season to grow and then he'll be great. The expectation is hopefully the growing pains happen against Arizona, right? And now again, I'm not sure that's reasonable, but that is in part sort of my expectation is for Jackson Arnold immediately to be very, very good, John.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I stand too. I'm going to give you some numbers real quick, and you can tell me if you would take this season from your starting quarterback. 65.1% completion for 3,364 yards, 23 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 8 rushing touchdowns, and 389 rushing yards. Would you take that season?
Sure, absolutely.
So that's what Jackson Dart did for Ole Miss last year. And that had Ole Miss kind of in the very much in the top 10 by the end of the season, which would have put them in the playoff. And if there was a 12-team playoff in 2023. So if Oklahoma can play a good team game and play well balanced, both offensively, defensively, in the passing game, in the running game, then I think it's going to put them in the mix for one of those 12 or maybe 14 spots in the college football playoff. Speaking of quarterbacks at Quarterback University, our man Baker Mayfield got himself a new deal, according to reports. We're going to talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV, and it'll provide access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV, whether it's opening weekend for baseball, which is sneaking up, or the college basketball tournament, the NCAA tournament. You're going to want to have a Fire TV. And oh, by the way, Fire TV recently created their Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us right here at the Locked On Podcast Network, most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all of the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, you name it. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos, if that's what you're into as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, well, you should. Trust us on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV.
You ever had that moment where you're looking for a last-minute ticket and you don't know where to go? Well, Gametime's got you covered. Go to gametime.co, go to your app store, download the Gametime app, and you can find all of the last-minute deals for whatever you're looking for. I'm looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder schedule right now, and on Tuesday they play the Pacers. You got tickets as low as $2 over at Gametime. You want to see my Dallas Mavericks play the Oklahoma City Thunder? Hey, that's a pretty good ticket, $20 to go see Luka Doncic and the Mavericks. If I were a little bit closer to Oklahoma City, I might be making the trip down there to Paycom and making that part of my weeknight adventure. So the only pro basketball game I've actually ever seen in person was the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's a great time. So if you haven't done that, go download the Gametime app, use promo code Locked On to get $20 off your first purchase. Great seats, last minute deals over at Gametime. Baker Mayfield is the man of the hour on Sunday, as according to reports from Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, Adam Schefter, and many, many more across the NFL landscape, Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are set to agree, or have agreed in principle, depending on the wording you want to use from your favorite NFL reporter, on a 3-year, $100 million contract that will keep Baker in Tampa Bay. Now, according to some of those reports, he's got some incentives that could increase that deal to $115 million total. He's going to get $50 million guaranteed as part of the deal. This is a steal for the Bucs, in my opinion. You look at some of the contracts that are out there in average annual value, which is a lot of what agents will use to negotiate for their player that they represent. And a guy like Daniel Jones for the New York Giants, when he signed his deal just last offseason, got $40 million in average annual value. So Baker gave the Bucs a little bit of a deal in his $33.3 million in average annual value, which ranks 17th in the NFL, according to overthecap.com. I love this for Baker. It's a great situation, a place that he has obviously loved. And, he earned a spot there by beating out Kyle Trask, and really made himself a part of that Tampa Bay community and became a fan favorite, had a great connection with Mike Evans this year, helped them get to the divisional round of the playoffs in 2023. So just a great fit all the way around, and super happy for Baker Mayfield to find that after the Cleveland Browns fiasco, bouncing from Carolina to LA, and now has a home in Tampa.
Yeah, no, it's great to see, obviously, and wild card victory over the previous NFC representative before the San Francisco 49ers got back in Philly, 32-9. Baker Mayfield orchestrated really that wild card beatdown of Philadelphia. 3 touchdown passes in that one, and when you do it in the postseason, you obviously prove a lot of your franchise worth. And Baker did that, toss it for 330 yards that day and the 3 scores. And oh, by the way, he had Tampa Bay fighting back to maybe go rally and beat Detroit, who was one of the best teams in the NFC this past season too. So it makes sense. This was always the most likely outcome, I think, for Tampa Bay and for Baker Mayfield. Obviously, they got him, as you mentioned, John, for I think a good price. But for Baker Mayfield, somebody who, leaving Cleveland and what happened in Carolina, and then briefly with the Rams, there was sort of reigniting things somewhat. It kind of felt like Baker's days as a guaranteed starter weren't necessarily there anymore. That maybe his days as a starter in the NFL were starting to be numbered. And yet he comes back, he gets this opportunity with Tampa Bay, though it was a quarterback competition. He had to fight for it with Trask. He won the gig. And what does he do? He goes out and throws for it. First of all, plays in all 17 games of the regular season, and then goes out and throws 4,000 yards and 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and gets Tampa Bay, obviously, to where they won a game in the postseason. So this was the most likely outcome. It made the most sense. You don't shake things up when you've got a quarterback that's went and done that and has continuity. You brought Mike Evans back. He probably wants the quarterback back that he went and accomplished all these things with last season. So, but for Baker to be where he was, man, and to get this deal, okay, so in terms of average annual value, it's a bargain in some ways, maybe for Tampa Bay, but for Baker Mayfield, this is a fortune, man, considering where maybe his career trajectory was sort of headed. For him to get this deal, and it's, however much guaranteed that it is, it's a bunch, and it's 3 years, $100 million with some incentives on top of that. It's I agree with you. I'm very happy for Baker Mayfield. He earned it. But given where maybe things were possibly headed, this is a massive windfall of cash and opportunity for Bag.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes finding the right situation more than anything. You go number 1 overall, and dude, that's awesome. And it highlights just what kind of a player you were in college. But when you land in an organization like the Cleveland Browns and they just struggle to put a team together, you go help them win their first playoff game in more than 30 years. And then you're kind of cast aside. It's such a weird story. And then you just love to see the comeback. You love to see the come up to where he goes to a place like Tampa Bay, takes over for one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, if not the greatest quarterback of all time, and Tom Brady. And Tampa Bay is able to go to the playoffs. Like, that's huge, man. That's just a huge part of his story. And it just kind of continues to resurface itself, right? The sequel was a lot like the original, where, kind of cast aside by Texas Tech, goes to Oklahoma, reignites his collegiate career, goes and wins a Heisman, and then goes off to the NFL, cast aside by the Browns, finds a new home in Tampa Bay after really, he earned it by the performance he had with the Los Angeles Rams at the end of that season, goes to Tampa Bay and then earns a starting job. So this is a guy that he's found the right situation, which a lot of times matters just as much as the contract, as, the team that you're playing for. He found a situation where the coaching staff is behind him, the players are behind him, and he earned the respect of the locker room pretty quickly in Tampa Bay and became a leader for that team. Was it perfect last year? Was it always great? No, but he really finished the season on a high note over the last 5 or 6 games, was really on a tear. And so now gets a chance to build on something heading back to Tampa Bay for the next 3 years.
And I think they've got a chance to be very competitive in that division, and with the right tooling around them to go from where they've been to perhaps a legitimate NFC contender. I think that Baker Mayfield can guide them toward the top of the NFC. I don't think that the ceiling here with Tampa Bay and with Mike Evans and with Baker Mayfield, I don't know that they've found it yet. So, you mentioned the topsy-turvy nature of Baker's career, and really just let's focus on the Cleveland component of it, where it's a new offensive coordinator, a new this, a new that, again and again and again. Well, now maybe there's some continuity for everybody involved in Tampa Bay. And obviously that's great to see for our guy, Baker Mayfield. Got himself, it was a prove it type season, and he proved it.
And this 3-year deal gives him an opportunity to cash in another time here in the next few years. If everything goes well for him at Tampa Bay, he's going to have a chance to hit another big contract, because when this contract ends, he'll be like 32 going on 33. So still very much in his prime as an NFL quarterback, with only the shoulder injury to his injury history. But the Oklahoma Sooners, man, had a pretty great weekend on the diamond, up and down weekend on the basketball court. Let's discuss all that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process even easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. So go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So it was a pretty great weekend if you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan, for the most part. Now, if you're an OU men's hoops fan, a little disappointed. But let's start with OU women's basketball. The number 1 seed in the Big 12 tournament got off to a great start against TCU, up early in that game. And, TCU made it interesting in the second quarter, but Jenny Baranczyk and her girls, man, they were off and running. Sahara Williams leads the way with 17 points, 13 of which come in the second half. For the true freshman, pretty remarkable Big 12 tournament debut for her and for the Oklahoma Sooners, who, they've just continued this roll through Big 12 play and are just constantly making a case for a pretty nice seed in the NCAA women's tournament.
Yes, they are. And obviously you go and win this Big 12 tournament. And I think that would give Oklahoma an opportunity to host the first couple of games inside the Lloyd Noble Center. I think that might be the tipping point to getting up to that 4 and above seeding line. The structure of this tournament, I know this is super unimportant, but the win over TCU was a Saturday game, and they turn around and they play Iowa State on Monday. So that just feels so weird for a conference tournament, but I guess they have a little bit of wiggle room before March Madness starts to do that. That's the number one thing that struck me this weekend is, why is the scheduling format the way it is?
Well, there was a bunch of games before it even got to Oklahoma as the 1 seed and Texas as the 2 seed. They had to kind of wait on those lower seeds in the tournament to get going, but just a big win. Jenny Baranczyk, she's established herself as one of the hot young coaches in college basketball, and continually making this team to be a potential national power as she continues to grow and build the program. I think after losing all the talent they lost after last season, it took a little bit of time to get everything going, but man, they've just been rolling since conference play began. And she's really found something with, Peyton Verhulst and Sahara Williams. And this was a game where Skylar Van and Peyton Verhulst, they combined to shoot 5 for 19. You needed Sahara Williams and Lexi Keys to carry you. And that's just how deep this roster is. On the OU men's side of things, just another really, really rough start for Porter Moser and his gang. They battled back to have it within 5 at halftime down there in Austin against Texas. But man, the Texas Longhorns just took their game to a completely another level in the second half. And ran away from Oklahoma, even though it was a 14-point deficit. At one point, Texas was up by 20 points. The Longhorns shot 63% from the field. From the field. They only shot 12 threes in the game because they were just getting to the bucket at will for the most part. But yeah, just a bummer of a loss for the Longhorns. I still think that they're going to be a tournament team, but man, you just never know how the selection committee is going to go down.
Yeah. For Oklahoma, probably behoove yourself to take care of business versus TCU. You win that first game, and then you're not going to get penalized with anything with Houston, I don't think. But take care of business there to feel safe that you've secured an at-large bid.
And then on the diamond, let's start with OU baseball. Josh had a great weekend. The Sooners swept the UCF Knights, coming off who UCF has a big win over Florida, looking really, really good. It helped Oklahoma propel their RPI into the top 10 with a explosive last couple of games against the Knights.
And it was a great weekend at L. Dale Mitchell Park. They obviously had to play the doubleheader on Saturday, weather not cooperating on Friday. But this was a UCF team that came in 9-1, as you mentioned, had just knocked off number 4 Florida. And oh, by the way, there was a win over Miami for UCF on its schedule already as well. So this was a UCF team that came in a head of steam, its best start since the 2020 season. In Oklahoma, flat out cooled them right off. The first game, they could have gone either direction. Game 1 of the doubleheader, 4-3, Oklahoma won it. And they won it doing what Oklahoma does, just getting some guys on and finding a way to get them in. Sack fly for Willits in the 7th tied it. And then the way Oklahoma scored the game-winning run, I don't know if it was intentional or not. I tend to think that it wasn't. I don't know why you would intentionally walk someone, but the weirdest thing happened, John, if you missed it, okay? Easton Carmichael, a full count, and there was a pitching change for UCF. So the new pitcher comes in and doesn't throw a pitch. It's ball 4. The action clock expired. They walk Carmichael, okay? They pinch run, put Jason Walk at first. He steals second base. A grounder to third. Wait for the throw across, and then Walk takes third. They try and come across the diamond. They throw it away. Walk sprints home. He takes third, and then on the errant throw, he takes home base, and they win it 4-3. So that was sort of chaos personified for Oklahoma baseball. Just get somebody on the bags and make something happen. They got a great start from Braden Davis. And then the rest of the way, the second half of the doubleheader on Saturday wasn't the start that Oklahoma was looking for from Brendan Girton, but Atwood, Stevens, Hensley, Pruitt, the bullpen combined was great behind Girton, kept it right where it was. Oklahoma got the offense going early. Snyder had a bases clearing RBI triple that brought home 3, and OU really from that point forward didn't look back. They won 11-3 in that contest, and then a trio of 3-run home runs on Sunday to win 14-2. It was a run rule victory for Oklahoma over UCF. They won it 14-2, and Snyder, Frederick, and Carmichael walked it off with the 3-run bomb. So really, a sensational weekend for OU. Now they're 9-5. The RPI, as you mentioned, took a massive spike upwards, and we gear up for Bedlam on Tuesday.
And that's going to be a fun one as always. And then Oklahoma softball just crushed, beating Iowa State, getting the sweep. Kelly Maxwell, 7-inning complete game shutout of the Cyclones in the first game on Saturday. And then the Bats woke up in the second game against the Cyclones, picking up a big win. And then they did so again on Sunday. Sydney Sanders, man, she's on fire. All of a sudden, she had 4 home runs over the weekend. She's got 6 home runs in the month of March, 15 RBIs. She was big time. Tiare Jennings got going. Kinsey Hansen had a 3-run bomb. It's coming together. If there was any concern about Oklahoma's offense, which there shouldn't really have been, because you have several players that could contend for the National Player of the Year in the lineup, it's coming together. They're hitting their stride. Are they a complete and perfect team? No. But they're still arguably the best team in the nation, and they continue to prove it out there on the diamond. It's a nice response. After losing the game the week before to Louisiana, they've had a really nice response We saw our friend Alex Sirocco talk about it on social media. She said this team just looks like they're having fun playing loose. And that's what you want for this team as they go through the season, is just playing loose. Ella Parker, Cassidy Pickering, the freshman, still stepping up, playing really, really well. Kirsten Deal had another great start in her string of great starts since the Long Beach State start that kind of went awry. She's been really, really good since then. But Oklahoma softball, it wouldn't surprise me to see them back in the unanimous top spot after this weekend that they had, and with what Texas had to struggle with a little bit against Houston in their conference opening series. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshDonRef. You can hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KREF Sports app. You can also hear him covering OU baseball throughout this season. And I mean, when Josh is covering OU baseball, good things seem to happen. So
everywhere but Las Vegas.
Yeah, but what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? You don't talk about it. And you can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. But until next time, he's Josh, I'm John, Boomer Sooner.